Oklahoma crushed on the recruiting trail in the month of July, but who was their top recruiter? We'll discuss that and more on tonight's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. And this first segment is going to be brought to you by LinkedIn, our recruiting partner here on the Locked On Network. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And the Oklahoma Sooners have found the right people for their team quite frequently in the month of July, both in the 2024 recruiting class and the 2025 cycle. I mean, last week was just 2025 just taking the reins all of a sudden out of the 2024 cycle's hands. So that brings us to this question, Josh. Who was Oklahoma's top recruiter in the month of July?
Well, the beautiful thing about it is you can have a heck of a conversation on this front. And, you know, if you widened the parameters out to, you know, which I think some people, when they hear this or think of this, will probably do just that, widen the parameters out to, okay, well, what have the last couple of months looked like for Oklahoma? Just the summer recruiting for OU, since you kind of got into obviously the meat and potatoes of the recruiting calendar for Oklahoma. Who takes the cake as the Oklahoma assistants? Because, okay, if you look at just the 24 class in the month of July, you almost backtrack it a couple of days. Technically, Ivan Carrion was June 30th, but it's like, okay, well, I mean, that was basically July, right? The flip from Texas Tech to Oklahoma, but technically it wasn't, right? Okay, technically it wasn't. So Devon Mitchell, a tight end, that's the highest rated tight end in the history of recruiting for Oklahoma. Jaden Jackson, surprising commitment for Oklahoma that a lot of people didn't necessarily know or think was going to happen. Zion Raggins, when you think of Emmett Jones, Tatum, nation's top running back for one, DeMarco Murray, even Mr. Bedenbaugh got into the action with Eugene Brooks. So you can have a very interesting debate about this. If I'm taking it back just a little bit into the month of June, really just the heart of the summer, like if you change again the parameters from July to just the heart of the summer for Oklahoma, I think the choice is Emmett Jones with what he's done in the 24 and 25 cycles. But the beauty of this question, John, is you can make a nice argument for DeMarco. You can make a nice argument for Joe John Finley. You can make, okay, is there some late momentum here, as we'll dive into a little bit deeper with Coach Bedenbaugh, but just the way collectively Oklahoma's staff has been recruiting, John, I'm leaning Emmett Jones, but man, flowers across the board for a lot of Oklahoma's assistants.
And could we even throw Skip Johnson into the mix for what Oklahoma was able to pull off with Taylor Tatum, getting the nation's #1 running back, a composite 247 Sports 5-star player? I mean, you got to throw him in there as an honorable mention as well. But I'm gonna lean kind of Todd Bates, because in all of the commitments that they got in the month of July, Jaden Jackson was the one that seemed the least likely until like a couple of days before the commitment happened. And I mean, I know there's a lot that went into that, but who's the lead recruiter in that one? Todd Bates. So I think that to me, that's a big one, a big win for him and for the Oklahoma Sooners. But you're right. I mean, they've had so many big wins for them. Davin Mitchell and Joe John Finley. That was huge. Now you also give, again, an honorable mention to Michael Hawkins being a big time, a big friend or good friend of, Mitchell's going way back. That kind of thing matters. But Joe John Finley was able to make that work for him and for the University of Oklahoma in landing Mitchell, one of the top players in the 2024 class, and could end up being a 5-star player by the end of the cycle. So you're right, man. There have been so many really big wins. You know, the Eugene Brooks win, beating out Texas for that recruitment or that commitment. The Reagans win, you know, beating out Georgia, beating out Florida State. Like, these are huge wins, and there hasn't been any small potatoes wins for the Sooners, and they've got potentially another commitment that could occur on the 31st. We're recording Sunday night, so Michael Patterson McDonald is going to commit on the 31st in the evening, and that's looking like it's going Oklahoma's way too. So you're looking at, you know, Brandon Hall, Jay Valai getting in on the action as well. So I mean, everybody's kind of had their hand in building this recruiting class in the month of July by being able to lock up some big time commitments.
My final vote will be to Emmett Jones, just for the collective push.
Sheer numbers, crazy.
Yeah, you know, sheer numbers. So even if you don't go all the way back to, you know, Oklahoma's first commitment in the 24 class, remember, was March 25th. So it, you know, I mean, the first commitments then, and so everything that we've seen so far is after that. So it's not that far back that we're going, you know, what, 3 months for Emmett Jones, and Oklahoma made their first splash with Kelly Daniels, and then, of course, Zion Kearney. But even if you just take it back to, I'm saying that it's essentially a month, to June 20th, a month and change, right? Well, you're talking about Dozie Ezukami. You're talking about Ivan Carrion as a flip. You're talking about Raggins. You're talking about Elijah Thomas. And you know, then obviously you'd go a little bit further back again with Grayson Harris in the 25 class. But I think you have to say assistant coach award of the last however little bit, even though there's an interesting debate because of just, again, what DeMarco did and what Joe John Finley did, and even Beatonbow and others. I think it's got to be just the collective nature of it for Emmett Jones, but it just speaks, I think to what this staff, again, as a group, John, has done.
Yeah, and if the buzz is correct, he could potentially land another wide receiver commitment here in the next couple of weeks in the 2025 cycle, which, you know, Isaiah Mose out of Lee Summit North was down for the Sooners Under the Stars event, and it sounds like everything continues to trend Oklahoma's direction for the 4-star wide receiver in the 2025 cycle. Again, I believe he's off to Oregon now, taking a visit as well. So that could certainly change some things, but Emmett Jones probably in the last 8 months has been Oklahoma's most effective recruiter, you know, picking up 2 transfer additions, 7 high school commitments in the 2024 and 2025 cycles. It's been absolutely crazy what he's done, but man, what's fun about this is that so many of their assistants have had big time recruiting wins. And I think that's the thing that continues to blow me away, is just how good of a recruiting staff Brent Venables has put together on both sides of the football. And it's bearing out seemingly every single week now that we're in the final stretch of the 2024 cycle before, you know, the high school season starts. We're about to see, you know, several 5-stars come off the board. We're waiting on decisions on Williams Nwaneri and David Stone and Dominic McKinley. And then, you know, the Caden Durham thing, which we'll get into a little bit here in a second. But I mean, there's a lot of, you know, Grant Brix, who we'll talk about here later in the show as well. There's a lot of big time names that people have been tracking for a long time that still have decisions to make. And Oklahoma's right in the thick of it for a lot of these really high profile targets. We'll talk about a couple of the running backs that Oklahoma might be. We'll see where Oklahoma lands with these, but we'll talk about them after I talk to you about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that your part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. So Josh, we've got a couple of Oklahoma's targets that at the running back position who dropped top 3 lists over I think it was on Sunday evening that they each did. Let's start with Caden Durham because that's the one where that is maybe the most high profile. And, Oklahoma's been in the thick of it for this guy for a while, the Duncanville native, who is good friends with David Stone and Michael Patterson McDonald. But he dropped his top 3 that includes Oklahoma, LSU, and Texas A&M. He was in Baton Rouge and decided he was going to change his commitment date. It seems like all the buzz based on, what guys like Parker Thune are saying, that Caden Durham's heading towards LSU at this point. Now, LSU is always going to be the biggest threat to Oklahoma in this recruitment. One, the track team. That's a big draw for him as well. But also a guy that the LSU is recruiting heavily against Texas for, Colin Simmons, the 5-star defensive end, could be trending that way as well. And good buddies, the two of them. So there's a good chance that they could end up going to LSU together. Yeah, that's kind of where Caden Durham lands at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this is probably starting to shift and swinging LSU's way based on the visit and the commitment date. And look, when somebody like Parker Thune flips a prediction from Oklahoma to LSU, he's not just doing that on a complete whim here. I mean, obviously there's some smoke and good chance there could be fire away to LSU. Bottom line is Oklahoma's got Xavier Robinson in this class. They've got Taylor Tatum, the nation's top running back, in this class. And, oh, by the way, you got Hicks, you got Smothers, you got Barnes, you got Sawchuk. So, you can't win them all. And even though to me, I could make a pretty strong argument that, why wouldn't you want to come be a pairing with a Tatum? A lot of the items that we've talked about, or a trio with Xavier Robinson in this class, just because, yeah, there's something to be said for coming in and being the star. But we've seen running back tandems at Oklahoma. When you think about Pirine, when you think about Mixon, we've seen a running back duo at Georgia in a Rose Bowl. Yeah, it's a little ways back now all of a sudden. But, I mean, we've seen these terrific running back tandems where it works out for all parties, and it saves some carries off your body. And, oh, by the way, everybody goes and gets their bag too afterwards. So, I mean, if it's just an opportunity at LSU to be the lead running back, I think everybody sort of understands that, yeah, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of folks toting the rock probably in the future at Oklahoma. And ultimately, that's tough to overcome in some instances, John, if that's the most important component to it. Again, I could make a strong argument that, you probably want to surround yourself with guys that will take some of those carries off your plate a little bit, but just sort of feels like, again, the writing is on the wall here that maybe, John, there's just one too many talented running backs in Norman, Oklahoma.
It always seemed odd to me that they would take 3 running backs in a cycle. Now, I'm not one to sit here and question, Brent Venables and DeMarco Murray and that whole recruiting staff. They're great. It just seemed like it was going to be an odd fit, an odd mix because of the depth that they already have at the position. And then you add 3 more guys to it, and then it, just creates a little bit of a logjam for the future. And, there is only so many carries to go around, but eventually so it always felt like it was going to end up at 2, but you just never know how they would end up deploying these guys once they got them on campus. And we've talked about how developmental pathways for everybody isn't exactly the same. A guy that's able to contribute as a freshman and sophomore, one guy might be able to do that. Another guy might not be able to contribute until he's a sophomore or junior. That's just the way developmental stuff works. And everybody's on a little bit different timeline. So it doesn't surprise me so much that Caden Durham is trending now toward LSU. I think it's going to be a great fit for him in an offense that's going to allow him to, both run and catch the ball. I think it's going to allow, I don't want to, compare him to a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because I think he's probably faster than that, but somebody who's going to have a chance to make some big time plays down in Baton Rouge, and he'll be a fan favorite because of his speed. He's an electric player. And, I was having this discussion with one of my writers, and, we're talking about how it's not really a loss because of the depth that Oklahoma has on the depth chart. And the way I like to try to evaluate these recruits and the commitments, it's like, just look at them in their own light. And if they're a good player and you didn't get them, it's a loss, no matter what else you have. So, but you can feel okay because you've got Taylor Tatum, you've got Xavier Robinson, and you've got, your 2022 and 2023 running backs. You can feel okay about it, but it's still okay to to say yeah, that was a loss. Like it's a miss because he's a good player going somewhere else that you didn't get. And like you said, Josh, you're not going to be able to get them all, but, and you can feel comfortable about what you have in your room, but still Caden Durham's an electric player that's going to go play for a team that you're going to have to compete against down the road in the SEC. So it is a bit of a loss, but again, DeMarco Murray's been fantastic on the recruiting trail over the last few years, getting Taylor Tatum. I mean, this is no critique of DeMarco Murray. Don't mistake that, but it is a loss because he's a great player that's going to go play for somebody else. Any thoughts on Caden Durham before we move the needle here?
Just that last piece. I mean, obviously it would be better for Oklahoma if you wound up in that dream scenario. And who knows, right? I know that Parker Thune has flipped his prediction, and probably there's other dominoes in that respect to follow here, but you can't totally count out DeMarco in Oklahoma just yet. I know that it feels like, okay, that this has swung LSU's direction, but technically there's not been a commitment yet. And until there's a commitment and until there's a signature, you've got Oklahoma, you've got DeMarco Murray, and you've got some strong arguments to make, some of which we've made right here on this program tonight. So this thing's not done, but if it goes that direction, yeah, it's a loss because Caden Durham might wind up being an NFL running back. Again, you watch what he can do and just the electricity out of the backfield, whether it's running or catching the football. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about this is a blue chip superstar type running back in his own right. So, yeah, you would have loved to have had that dream scenario where you wind up with a Robinson, Tatum, and Durham. But, yeah, it feels like it's just not going to play out that way. Again, not worth panicking about because Oklahoma's in this great situation. But I hear what you're saying, too, which is it's okay for a fan to be like, wish Durham had come to Oklahoma, too.
Right. Well, it goes back. It goes back to the Colton Vasek flip for me. We were so pumped about getting this 4-star prospect, a guy with great size, great potential on the edge that was going to be a part of Brent Venables and Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis's defensive line. And then he flips to Texas. And I'm not going to say every Oklahoma fan, but for a lot of Oklahoma fans, all of a sudden he was no good, or he wasn't as good as people thought he was. And so I only say all of this to be like, listen, if Caden Durham chooses to go to LSU, he's still a really good player, even if he didn't choose Oklahoma. So it's okay to recognize and acknowledge he's still a really good player. Oklahoma's still got a really good situation. It's a bummer we missed, but he's still really, really good. So I just don't want us to do the thing. And I don't think our fans, our listeners, but maybe new listeners might. I don't think we're doing this, but there are people out there that do this, where they automatically begin to downplay somebody's talent just because they didn't pick the school. Let's not do that. He's a great player. We would have loved to have him on our team, but he's not coming to our team.
We don't think.
Probably not. Potentially, allegedly. But he's still a really good player. Sorry. Rant over. Done. Let's talk Andy Bass, the 3-star athlete, potentially a running back, in the mix, or maybe a slot wide receiver. Who knows where he can line up for any number of teams. But he dropped his top 3 as well on Sunday. And that included the Oklahoma Sooners, the Syracuse Orangemen, and the Kansas State Wildcats. Josh, is it just me, or I'm just getting the feeling that Kansas State is going to be the new thorn in Oklahoma's side as they recruit kind of the Midwest and Oklahoma and Texas and all that?
Maybe, I think the Big 12 in general, and not to turn this into a, hey, what's the future of the Big 12 conversation, but as you start thinking about, Oklahoma and Texas's moves to the SEC and just what the 2023 season in the Big 12 might hold for both OU, Texas, and obviously for everybody else in the league, you've got Kansas State, who's the defending Big 12 champion. And, obviously the league itself is about to radically shift. now and into the future, the Colorado news, and I don't know, are there other dominoes out west? So just all of it, what it's going to wind up being, we don't know. Now, it would behoove Kansas State more, I think, than it would probably Oklahoma and Texas, just because OU and Texas are established brands, right? If K-State goes and wins this conference again next year, and then all of a sudden OU and Texas are gone, what does that mean for who K-State can become? Long-winded way to say, yeah, I'm with you. I think Kansas State is going to be, with Coach Kleiman, who I have a ton of respect for, I think they're going to be in the mix, right? It's not surprising that Kansas State is, it's like every once in a while, a Brix or others, you look up Bass in this instance, like Kansas State, what? And yeah, I mean, that could very well be Kansas State for these types of regional recruits, that they're kind of, you hope they're not a big thorn in your side. I think Oklahoma in a lot of these recruitments, Oklahoma is probably where most recruits would say, yeah, I'm leaning Oklahoma, but probably, yeah, Kansas State's going to be a familiar face going forward for all of those long-winded set of reasons.
Yeah, so Andy Bass, the talented Oklahoma product, an incredible athlete that I really feel like they could fit as a slot receiver, as a running back. Kansas State being in the top 3, not all that surprising. He's going to get opportunities there. He is a dynamic player that's able to make a lot of plays happen, both with his agility and his quickness, and he's got really, really good speed as well. So it's a very intriguing option for, Chris Kleiman and the Wildcats, as they look for kind of that next Deuce Vaughn or next Darren Sproles, someone who might not necessarily be the biggest of backs, but somebody who's a really good player and just going to be able to make a lot of things happen, electric with the football. And that brings us to our next potential Oklahoma-Kansas State shootout, and that's for Grant Brix. Grant Brix, the talented 4-star offensive lineman out of Iowa. Everything is still very much up in the air. This guy is the number 5 offensive tackle in the 24/7 sports composite, a top 100 player in the composite, and number 1 player in the state of Iowa. It's still probably unknown who necessarily is in the lead here, but it sounds like, based on someone I talked to, that Oklahoma made a really strong impression at the party at the Palace, and everything could be shifting in Oklahoma's direction. And, Bill Bedenbaugh, he's a great recruiter. We talked about it a little bit earlier. He's a fantastic recruiter. Jeff Lebby, being an offensive line, guy, in his past and his history, I think that allows him to kind of tag team with Bill Bedenbaugh a little bit to go deeper on the offensive line discussion and how people are going to get deployed and what the system is going to look like, and be able to kind of share that and have those conversations. So you don't just get your offensive line coach, you get your offensive coordinator in those discussions as well. And so I think that bodes well for this recruitment. Who knows where it'll end up. I think from what we understand, according to Parker Thune, that they want to probably wrap this up here in the next few weeks. But yeah, it's looking good for Oklahoma. Again, Nebraska, Kansas State are going to be, players in this recruitment. And then who else? Nebraska, Kansas State, Oklahoma is kind of where it seems like the favorites lie. Now, who's in the lead for them? It's hard to say at this point, but Oklahoma's right there in the mix. And that's where you got it. You got to be in the mix to get a commitment.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that it was the most important prospect on campus that you were trying to make some headway with this past weekend. And, a lot of the names on campus were already committed names to Oklahoma. That, obviously handful uncommitted guys, and Grant Brix, just because of what has happened in this cycle for Oklahoma at times. Again, I think you could make a nice little argument that was maybe the most important name at the party at the Palace for Oklahoma. So good to hear that Oklahoma made some strides and was impressive. You would expect no different. Again, you look at Kansas State, Nebraska, Oklahoma. Well, Kansas State, Big 12 champions, great offensive line history at Kansas State. So, easy argument there. Nebraska, what they're trying to build with Matt Rule, not a lot, proven there in that respect. And then Oklahoma, who Oklahoma's been. I like Oklahoma from that standpoint, but it just sounds like there was a healthy lead that you had to, or probably are still having to try and make up, John, against Kansas State, right? It's like Kansas State got out to this healthy lead at one point, and so you're just still constantly trying to make that up. But what you hear from this weekend is that Oklahoma maybe did make a healthy margin of that up.
And we'll see where it all lands. We'll, as the recruitment period goes dark and we kind of get into the non-communication, period of things starting this week. It's going to be interesting to see where this all kind of transpires. I mean, again, we got Grant Brix coming up. We got Josh Iasosa coming up. We got Michael Patterson McDonald coming up on the 31st. We got Caden Durham later this month. We got Williams Waneri. So many guys. Can't even think of them all. Grant Brix. I don't have the list right in front of me. Who?
David Stone.
David Stone, obviously, of course. Sorry, Mr. Stone. Forget you. I did not mean that. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. We got fall camp starting up this week. OU Media Days is on Tuesday. I'll be in attendance. Josh, you're going to be in attendance?
I should be out. Yeah, at Media Days as well. I'll be popping in and out as Plank and I do a little hot potato on the radio side. But yeah, I'll be over that way.
Josh has got to work. He'll be working and also getting that intel as well from the coaches and the players as we get to meet with them on Tuesday in Norman. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Try to have some video to be able to bring to the show and audio as well for those on the podcast side of things. And so stay tuned for that. Again, be subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end or by the beginning of the football season. We're a little over 300 away. So you're going to be a big part in helping us reach that big milestone. So thank you so much for making that a part of, just what we do here and being a part of what we do. We're so thankful for you. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh on Ref. Follow myself at John 9 Williams. Follow the show at Locked On Sooners and on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcast. Until the next time, the Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time live show. He's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.